your brain is holding you back. Hard work and repetition don't make you smarter. They might be the very thing slowing you down. How many times have you spent hours studying, only to forget everything the next day? It's not because you're bad at learning, it's because you've been using the wrong method. The world's fastest learners know a secret, one that schools never teach. And once you understand it, you'll never study the same way again. Every day you don't use these techniques, you're wasting time and falling behind. But in the next few minutes, I'll show you how to flip the switch and unlock your brain's full potential. Let's be honest, learning is frustrating. You spend hours reading, watching, and practicing, only to forget most of it days later. It feels like no matter how hard you try, nothing sticks. People say the key to learning is grinding it out, repeating things over and over until they finally click. But that's not true. The problem isn't you, it's the system you've been taught. Schools train you to memorize facts, not to actually learn efficiently. But once you shift your mindset and apply the right techniques, you'll start absorbing information faster than you ever thought possible. The secret to learning 10 times faster isn't about studying more, it's about how you study. Let's look at Elon Musk. He didn't go to school for aerospace engineering, yet he built SpaceX and revolutionized the space industry by using a technique called first principles thinking. Instead of just memorizing what others told him, he broke down complex ideas into their simplest parts, understood the core principles, and built new knowledge from the ground up. But you don't need to be a genius or a billionaire to use these techniques. Some of the world's top students, athletes, and even memory champions use the same learning hacks to absorb information faster and retain it longer. How do you apply this? Let's break it down into 4 simple but powerful techniques. Your brain hates random facts but loves patterns. Instead of trying to memorize things individually, group related concepts together. This is known as chunking, and it's our first powerful learning technique. For example, if you're learning a new language, don't just memorize a list of random words, group them into categories like food, travel, or emotions. This makes recall way easier. Another amazing technique is known as active recall, and it's a total cheat code for learning faster and remembering more. Most people think studying means rereading their notes, highlighting key points, or passively skimming through a textbook. And yeah, that feels productive, but here's the problem. It doesn't actually help you retain information. Your brain doesn't get stronger by just seeing information, it gets stronger by retrieving it. That's where active recall comes in. Instead of just reviewing material, put yourself on the spot. Close the book, look away from your notes, and force yourself to recall the key points. Try writing them down or explaining them out loud without looking. If you struggle, that's a good thing. It means your brain is working to reinforce those neural connections. Method number 3 is called space recognition. Think about this. Have you ever crammed the night before a big test, only to forget everything a few days later? It's not because you weren't smart enough or didn't study hard enough, it's because your brain wasn't given enough time to properly absorb and store the information. Here's why that happens. When you try to learn everything in one sitting, your brain treats it like short-term data. Useful for now, but not worth keeping. But when you revisit the same material over multiple days, your brain recognizes it as important and strengthens the neural pathways that store that information. Instead of cramming for hours in one go, try breaking your study sessions into short, spaced-out intervals. For example, study a topic for 30 minutes today. Review it again tomorrow for 10 minutes. Come back in a few days for another short refresher. Each time you review, your brain strengthens its connection to that information, locking it into long-term memory. Now, the 4th technique is my personal favorite, the teach it to a 5-year-old method. And I know at first this might sound a little ridiculous, but trust me, this is one of the most powerful ways to lock information into your brain. Albert Einstein once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." And that's not just a nice quote, it's a core principle of how deep learning actually works. Here's why. When you teach something, you're forced to break it down into simple, logical steps. You have to strip away the fluff, organize the key points, and structure the information in a way that makes sense. And in the process, your brain actually rebuilds that knowledge, making it clearer and more permanent. Try explaining a new concept to a friend, a younger sibling, or even just out loud to yourself. If you stumble, hesitate, or realize you're just repeating memorized phrases without actually understanding them, you've just found a gap in your knowledge. And that's a good thing, because now you know what needs work. Now, imagine if you could learn twice as much in half the time. What if picking up new skills, mastering a language, or understanding complex subjects didn't feel like a never-ending struggle? What if studying didn't feel like a chore, but something that actually clicked and stayed with you? That's exactly what happens when you switch to these 4 science-backed learning techniques instead of the outdated methods we were taught in school. These strategies don't just help you remember more, they actually rewire your brain to think better, process information faster, and apply knowledge in a way that sticks. And here's the best part, you don't have to pick just one. Each of these 4 techniques is designed to work together, making your brain stronger and sharper with every use. But if you truly want to take control of your mind, don't go anywhere, because what I'm about to show you will completely change the way you think about learning forever. But first, we need to understand how your brain actually works. Your memory isn't just a storage unit, it's a dynamic system that strengthens with use. The more efficiently you engage with information, the stronger those neural pathways become. Think of it like a muscle. The more you engage with information in an active way, the stronger and faster your recall becomes. But simply reading something over and over again, that's like going to the gym and lifting weights without actually pushing yourself. It feels productive, but it doesn't create lasting results. Let's take a look at memory champions, people who can memorize entire decks of cards in minutes or recall thousands of digits of pi. They don't just try harder, they use visualization and association. They turn random numbers or words into vivid mental images and place them along a memory palace or mental map of a familiar location like their house. This technique taps into the brain's natural ability to remember images and spatial locations better than raw data. Why does this work? Because your brain isn't wired to remember abstract data. It's wired to remember stories, images, and places. This is why you can vividly recall details about your favorite childhood vacation, but forget a list of random numbers within seconds. By attaching information to something meaningful and memorable, you're giving your brain a shortcut to recall it faster. Even big tech companies do the exact same thing. Ever noticed how apps like Duolingo use streaks, rewards, and quick recall drills to keep you engaged? That's not an accident. It's dopamine-driven learning. Every time you complete a lesson or hit a streak milestone, your brain gets a small hit of dopamine, reinforcing the habit and making it feel enjoyable. This keeps you coming back, not because you have to, but because your brain wants to. So, what does this mean for you? Simple. You need to make learning engaging for your brain. Visualize new information, connect it to something familiar, and associate it with something positive, whether that's a personal goal, a fun challenge, or a meaningful reward. When learning stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling rewarding, that's when you unlock the ability to learn anything faster than you ever thought possible. Now, there's one massive secret that schools don't want you to know. Cramming can be beneficial. Literally everyone tells you not to cram. Teachers, parents, bosses. But the truth is that cramming is useful sometimes, and I'm sure you've noticed it too. Have you ever waited until the night before the test to study and then ace it? Cramming works, but here's the catch. Cramming only works for short-term memory. Back when I was in school, I had Spanish, and I hated it. And I was low on time from school, sports, work, and other activities. So instead of taking the time to learn Spanish, I simply just waited till the night before the test and studied a lot. I passed, now I basically know no Spanish at all. So here's the takeaway. Cramming is great for tests you don't care about, but for skills you actually want to keep, it's useless. I would not recommend it in general, and I would highly recommend against it for important things. But it can be a good last resort when needed. But at the end of the day, learning isn't just about cramming facts or spending hours buried in a textbook. It's about making the process work for you. Most people will keep relying on outdated methods, struggling to retain information, and wondering why they can't get ahead. But you now understand how your brain actually learns. You know that repetition alone isn't enough. You need to chunk, use active recall, space out your learning, and be able to teach it to make it stick. Imagine how much time you'll save when you're not rereading the same pages over and over again. Think about the confidence you'll have when you can recall information effortlessly instead of second-guessing yourself. Whether you're trying to master a new language, pick up a skill for your career, or just absorb information faster than everyone else, these techniques give you an unfair advantage. The truth is, most people will never take the time to learn how to learn. They'll keep struggling, thinking they're just bad at studying or not smart enough. But now, you know better. You have the power to change the way you learn. The only question is, will you use it? But let's be honest, knowing how to learn means nothing if you keep putting it off. And it's not just about willpower. There's a science to why we procrastinate and how to break the cycle for good. So if you've ever felt stuck, distracted, or like you can't get started no matter how hard you try, click here to watch my breakdown on how to beat procrastination for good.